Hello and welcome to this week's Makar to Makar. If this is your first time visiting Makar to Makar, a very warm welcome to you. And if you visited the programme more than once and enjoyed it, an even warmer welcome to you. This week we've got a really special lineup for you, and all of us have got something to do with, in one way or another, the NHS. So this programme, in a way, is a celebration of our wonderful National Health Service, which saw its 72nd birthday just earlier this month. And we're all, particularly in these times, incredibly grateful for our National Health Service. It's been a fantastic presenting this programme every week and being your host. Fantastic turning up again in my own living room and welcoming you in your living room, hopefully. Hopefully you've got a wee drink of something there and you're settled comfortably to enjoy our show. The idea behind this show is passing the baton from Makar to Makar, maker to maker, bard to bard. The word Makar just means the national poet of Scotland, and for the moment that's me. But Makar wasn't always used exclusively to describe Scottish poets or bards. It was also used to describe Chaucer in his day by Dunbar. So we like the idea in this programme of passing the baton from Makar to Makar, maker to maker, within the programme itself, between poetry and song, and to have a rich and heady mix of both forms and a conversation between them. So tonight we've got a really special lineup for you. To welcome onto our programme for the very first time is Ross Wilson. Suzanne Bonnar is back again, and the wonderful Colin McGuire is with us too. Hello to everybody.
Oh, hiya.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Hello Ross, hello hello Suzanne, hello Colin. Really great to see you. Well, normally I kick the programme off with a wee poem, but tonight I'm going to read a long poem to kick the programme off, because we're focusing on health in a way, and this is a long poem all about health. It's really in the voice of illness through the decades. My mum, a number of years ago, had a triple heart bypass, and when she came out of the experience, she said to me that as she was coming through the anaesthetic, she experienced all the illnesses from time immemorial. I went through the lot of them, Jackie, every illness there's ever been. And that seemed to me just an extraordinary, it's kind of typical of my mum, if you know her, to say something like that. Suzanne's laughing because she does know her. But it gave me an idea really for this poem, this long poem. And I should say, last week I had to give a strong language warning, and this for Adjoa's readings of June George, and this week I'm giving a strong language warning for myself for this poem. So if you don't like swearing, you can turn off now. That would have been a very quick visit to Makar to Makar. So what can I do? I just would urge you to stay. So this is Where It Hurts, and it's in the voice of illness through the centuries, a Scottish woman. Let me tell you what like it is. It's a great muckle hand inside my guts, clawing, or a camshuckle crow beak at my kidneys. See the way the thing over there is moving? Well, it moves like that, like a verb. There's a thump, the weight falling here. Give me your hand. That's it. Across my chest, heavy, like the Battle of Culloden. Oh Christ, yes. Don't kid yourself. I'm not kidding. The body is a bloody battlefield. These knees of mine are full of fluid. See, feel, don't be gentle. Push, prod. God, you can almost hear the sea in my knees. There's so much water, slapping, slopping, slobbering at the shore. I'm away the trip. You could cross the water, speed bonny boat, and still not reach me, bird on a wing. My illnesses keep coming, going out, in, out. I've been sick since time immemorial, since the days of the plague, the Black Death, since the reign of the frogs, cats and dogs. I could throw myself up and never come back, chuck myself into the sea, the North Sea. The black water would gulp me down whole. I don't think I'd so much as wave. I'm that sickened with myself. Sick, 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 sick to death of being sick, always spoiling everyone's fun, lying down when people are up and about, in a dark room when people are laughing in the light. I go to the doctor, but what does the doctor say? He looks at me as if I were a germ, a sudden outbreak. When did you start feeling this way? He mumbles, already scribbling my sentence, my fate. What's the disease inheritance? What's in the family? What odd traits have been passed down? Background? Christ, I come from a long line of sufferers. We lived with live-in disease-ridden beasts. We caught rabies, had babies, passed madness down. We clenched our crossed teeth. Sick to the back of Scotch teeth, I could spit my teeth out on the stone floor. Too many scones, treacle scones, fruit scones, currant loaf, malt loaf, crumble, too much sponge. Light sponge, heavy sponge, dumpling, shortbread, too many rhubarb tarts, eclairs. My blood sugar is soaring, my tongue is so sugary. I flatter my enemies, my healthy, blooming enemies. I say sweet things when I want to weep and spit. They tell me I'm looking well. Lies. I'm looking peely-wally. Today, people tell the sick they look well. A leper never had to suffer compliments. If I could say I had consumption, spotted fever, cholera, smallpox, tuberculosis, apoplexy, let's say, any class it would do, hookworm, bookworm, bubonic plague. If my house had to be fumigated, smoked with sulphur, if I could suffer a rosy in my face, eggs in my groin, some might take me seriously, might listen. If I could say, have an ordinary day, away from the worry, the body, I would be happy. How can I be happy when loss is greeting round the corner? Let my body fill with poison, bacteria, culture, whilst the workers go to the pictures or the opera. Culture with a chalk ice tub of vanilla. Let my body swirl with my hosts. Let the wee life forms dance and flounce, shaking their big bellies, sobbing, multiplying. Madam Butterfly, Tosca, Treponema, you clever bastard bacteria. Always a new story. Oh, bacteria, bacteria. Wild, the sea moans. Up to here. I've had it. Up to here. Here. Come here. I'm a guillotine at my own neck. Chop. My neck's as stiff as a donkey's. I can only turn round this far. I've got that bad. I've started to swear. I've begun to think in obscenities. I can't stop. Bastards. How did I get like this? So far away from myself. I used to love ballads, folk songs. I will go when the fighting is over, but the fighting of the body is never over. The stars are white cells. There is no beauty when you're sick like me, day in, day out, sunrise, sundown, it spreads like the illness spreads across fields, memories. My eyes see right through the body to the bad bits, the scary bits cowering inside the flesh, growths that people don't yet know about. I can see it coming. It's not just me, the tinge of green, the yellow eyes, the shaky hands, the puffy face, the telltale signs. True, true. Some are braver than me. I'm not brave. I've gone from one time to another, puking, spewing, bloated, swollen, sick as a parrot, a gambler, a joke, a dog, a mind, sick as a simile, sick, a poet, a plant, dripping, limp, languid, flaccid, fatigued, bored to death, belching, burping, breaking wind. Oh, the terrible ennui, the listlessness of illness. Oh, the repetitive answers. How are you? Not so good. Could be better. Seen better days. Don't ask. I'll leave that poem there for now, and I'm going to thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to continue that poem right at the end of the program and finish it off. That catalogue of different illnesses over the centuries. I'll leave you with that for the moment to think on. And for now, I'd like to welcome properly Ross Wilson. It's really great to have you on Makar to Makar, Ross. Welcome. You're a really wonderful, versatile poet and a man. You used to be a championship schoolboy boxer. And you're now an auxiliary nurse. You were shortlisted for your wonderful book published by Smokestack Press. in 2019, weren't you, for the Saltire Prize?
That's right, yeah.
And your letters to Rosie, your daughter, who you write so tenderly about, was published by Tapsaltiri Press recently. And I find it fascinating that range of interests from boxing to health to being a father and back again. And I know that your selection of poems that you put together for us kind of reflects all of these different interests. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So take it away, Ross.
Well, thank you, Jackie. I'll start with a new poem that's I written during the pandemic. My partner is also a key worker. She works as an occupational therapist, and she's a type 1 diabetic. She's had to be shielding and working from home while we care for her toddler. So I've been just working and caring all the time. So this is a wee poem called We, funnily enough. Your diabetes means you must work from home. My job means I must go to work. We are being called key or essential workers. To our 2-year-old, we are the swing social distancing keeps her from. We, she says, full of fun. Her tiny hands in our big hands. We swing her up between us. Like a metronome, she helps our hearts keep time. This is another new poem. It's part of a sequence written during this lockdown period. Rosie, she'll be 3 in September, she's went through this obsession with her pram and her baby dolls and walking the pram. So she's been like a key worker in a sense that she's been cheering up all the neighbours, seeing her out with her pram while they're stuck in their houses. So they've been chatting to her for a distance. This is called A Strange, Weird Time. The streets are quiet, and what people there are keep physically, if not socially, apart. Most agree it's a strange, weird time. At 2.5, Rosie is oblivious to all but the baby doll in its pram, though she stops every so often when something snags her attention, then moves on, as we must. Sometimes she moves so fast, she falls, and I hug her into a kiss. One time, I pulled her so close, an elbow sliced the scab from my nose. The sting went off like an alarm, waking me to the pressure from the mask that protects me at work. And then I was standing in the dark of our bedroom at 3 AM, fumbling among bookshelves I mistook for racks of PPE. I was only going to the toilet, yet anxiously grasping for a mask. But Rosie was over her fall and bored with all this hanging around in the head. Come on, Daddy, she said. And, like a child, I followed her lead. It's all about the baby in the pram. We can't stop now. We must go on. So when the virus first hit, you know, there was a lot of anxiety with the masks and that for a lot of us, and that kind of, you know, I was half sort of sleepwalking, thinking my bookshelves you could see here. I was thinking they were racks of PPE, and I was fumbling for a mask and stuff. I did end up with quite a bad pressure sore early on with the masks I was having to wear. This next poem is from my book Line Drawing. It's from Smokestack Books. I'm from a mining village in West Fife called Kelty. Although a lot of the Glaswegians think I'm from Brigadoon because of my accent. He called me a tutor. We've had that conversation every shift for the last 4 years in Glasgow. This is called Outside a Castle. We argued outside a castle. He wouldn't go in. His seatbelt held him back like a cord needing cut. He'd not forgotten what he'd been born into, with nothing. Aye then, I protested, pointing to what men had built with their own hands and imaginations. He saw calloused fingers sifting hours into monuments for their betters. I saw no point being bitter. He sat it out, a protester in his 80th year rebellion, while my palm turned over hard-earned minimum wages for a guided tour of privileges far removed from his ruined raws. I wrote this next poem before it became fashionable to be talking about essential workers. I use the words unacknowledged worker in it. It's in memory of my gran, and really, I guess, for women of her generation. It's called Just a Housewife, in memory of Ina Patterson. That's what they called her, just a housewife. I thought about that as we crossed the Forth. To the right of us, the rail bridge, a work of art exhibited in space. To the left, the new road bridge emerging from water. I thought of all the foundations holding roads and rails up and together. And I thought of her, unacknowledged worker, essential as any commuter on a road suspended in air. Just a pillar, they might have said you were. Just a pillar that holds us up and keeps us going, though hidden underwater, as if you weren't there. And this next poem's one of the first poems I wrote when that's in my main collection, line drawing, and it's dedicated to one of my boxing trainers. It's called The Way John Went Out. It's in memory of John Gray. I had you in my corner a few years, talking me into and through pain. Weekends you take me into Edinburgh and Glasgow to train. Midweek we worked out in Rosyth. Days in between I ran alone. We were about the same height then, 5'3", 5'8", I 14, all bone. You a trim 40, fitter than anyone in the gym, until I caught up, like time caught us, 6 years later. A 6-foot welterweight that day we met, hooks tucked under what had been a left hook, specs on an ever-broken nose. I was awoken that day like a brawler too clumsy to duck the surprise counter of your news. The best punches come from nowhere. This one hit before we could begin. A doctor stepped between us, waving it all off. A timekeeper beat the slow count out of days before a bell could ring. And it was a daze to stumble into, like those nights when I'd run alone in the dark of a wood, no stool to rest on, and no voice in the corner where I once stood. Tired and bloodied, with your hand flying my hand, like the kite we were both as high as, walking down the steps of Meadowbank Stadium, 1993. You came in with nothing, you said to me. You went out a champion. Okay. So my new pamphlet, Letters to Rosie, which is just a celebration of the birth in the first 2 years of my baby daughter. It was published in the midst of all this lockdown, so I've not been able to launch it. So this is kind of like a wee launch for me here. So this is a poem from that. It's called For Rosie. How could you not have been here, smiling, giggling in your chair, 7 months old, wee hand thumping your table with pleasure, like a man slapping his thigh in a comedy club, mouth full of laughter. Daddy plays the fool for Rosie, a jester in the court of her cuteness, jumping, hopping, pulling faces, making the rattling caterpillar go, up high in falsetto, down low in baritone. Your eyes follow my movements, your ears pick up my shifts in tone. A year ago the space you're in was empty, and I, almost 40, had no memories of you at all. Now they go into me fast as you grow into the space you need, and home and head. And all I can think of is, how could you not have been here? From nowhere to this chair, into air, as I lift you into my arms. Had we called Rosie anything else, we'd have to have changed her name, because she's got like the chubbiest, rosiest cheeks you've ever seen, and quite a rosy nature as well. And strangers are always saying to her, you know, someone's got rosy cheeks. Of course, no, that's what she's actually called. She's just living up to her name, am I telling them? This one's called Joy. You'd haul yourself up on my leather footstool and sway, thumping a chubby fist like a gavel, erupting baby babble. The stool's slanted angle made an ideal lectern for a mini preacher pontificating in her pulpit. Fluffy toys along the couch were your assembly. With no words to say, you preach word sounds, aga, ada, da, 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 and a sermon on pure joy. And this is another one from Letters to Rosie. This is called Shine. The year you took centre stage in our lives was the best summer anyone could remember. The sun blazed a spotlight over your pram as we wheeled you through Rooken Glen. You'd peer up at those billions who'd reach for you with arms like branches that stretched over their heads, so shadow bars alternated with blinding rays. New sensations blurred in a brain where a million neural connections spark per second under a wee hat you love to rip off. As if its tight grip restricted your growth. Data streamed in, data flowed out, and a gaze fixed on me, in days when memory was short and quickly eclipsed, like the sun you won't remember. I catch what I can with my pen, so that when you read this poem, the light that graced you as a bairn will shine on you again. I think that's my
That was lovely. That was lovely. I'm going to welcome Suzanne back as well at this moment. Great. I welcome Suzanne back at the moment, Ross, because both of you share something in common in the fact that Suzanne is a trained nurse and you're an auxiliary nurse. And I was wondering what this particular crisis has been like for you, coming from that experience of both being nurses. In your poems there, Ross, you kind of address the idea of parting and of arrival, of departure and arrival, of the sense of the sheer joy that you get from having Rosie in your life and not really being able to imagine the space being empty that she now occupies. And that's kind of brilliantly put. But you also write about John and the space that he's left behind and left the world a champion because he was so important to your heart. And we have, don't we, when we work in the NHS and when we work as writers, we share something in common, and that is empathy. We have to have an extraordinary amount, really, of empathy to be a writer in the first place, but also to work in the NHS.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been a very, and this, one of the big challenges I think during this time is the lack of, the visitors didn't have access to the hospitals. And when you speak of empathy and compassion, you're having to talk to, not so much myself, but the trained nurses and the doctors are having to communicate with the visitors on the telephone, or I think sometimes through things like social media like this, to keep in touch in that way. They've not had any physical contact during the COVID. So that's been very difficult for everybody, and obviously especially the people who have loved ones in the hospital. So yeah, I mean, it's that's one of the things that's been very challenging, I think, for everybody involved, really.
Oh, absolutely. And to know, to be able to imagine for people what that experience must be like, to know that this time is actually punctuated, really, for so many people by one different kind of absence or another. And that time is kind of tick-tocking away, and particularly when you're older, that you feel that you don't have that much time left, and this isn't necessarily, well, absolutely not how you would want to spend the rest of your life. When time is so precious, you want to be gathered around your loved ones. That's the instinctive thing to do, don't you think, Suzanne?
Yes, I do. And I think the thing for older adults, anyway, whenever they're admitted, I always find it really interesting. They want to know where their shoes are. It's funny, their shoes, isn't it? Their belongings, in particular shoes. I even remember with my own, excuse me, my own gran, when she went into hospital, it was her shoes. And that mirrored when I was nursing patients. And older adults, I love that area of practice too, because there's such an energy and feistiness. And I think it's people who have grown with wisdom and earned their stripes, and the humour and it's a beautiful area, to work in. It can be very difficult too, very challenging. Again, anything frontline, due lack of funding and support.
I worked in care of the elderly before I was in ICU for 3 years. In Kirkcaldy, so yeah, I know exactly what you mean there. It is challenging, but you do get some great banter as well, and meet some right characters, and
it's like the circle of life, isn't it? It becomes, and it's a real pleasure. I think it's one of the things that's been the greatest pleasure for me, one of the most important things that I've ever been able to do is to help another person freely, to give in the right sense. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a gorgeous gift that you get back from that, isn't it? Yes.
Definitely, yeah.
And do you see a connection, Ross, between writing a poem and being a nurse? Is there anything that the two have in common for you?
I've never really thought of it like that, to be honest. I suppose some of the things you touched on earlier is there, but you know, I mean, I suppose a poem you could write a nasty poem as well. You don't have to just be compassionate all the time with poetry. You could write in different voices, and I mean, as you said earlier, I mean, I'm writing about boxing quite a bit, so that involves doing the opposite, helping someone. You're hurting someone. You're actually trained to hurt somebody, so you're doing the opposite of it. And even though they've chosen to participate in a sport, and it's quite the opposite. So I'm quite interested in those contradictions that are in everybody. You know, that
I suppose
they're in us all. You know,
we're always finding words and always finding a better way to communicate and speak to patients and relatives. So in a sense, that bridge of that becomes whether you box or you nurse, or whether it's a punch, or you're either healing someone who's had a punch, or or someone's maybe trying to punch through delirium, or so it's always about finding words. You're always in a kind of cacophony of source.
Yeah, I mean, like that line in Ross's poem, the best punches come from nowhere.
Yes.
Which is kind of a sobering thought. And when you write and you have that moment of epiphany, it is like a slap. It's like a sudden
Yes.
awakening. You get a sense of a recognition of something when you've actually got close to something that you want to say. And this next song that you're going to sing, Suzanne, you wrote yourself. It's been wonderful having you on Makar to Makar over these weeks. You've sung an extraordinary range of songs and showed everybody just the enormity of your talent. I mean, it's been so exciting having you here. Because I first came across your work when you were on the wonderful Fly Me to Dunoon, and then I remember watching the Blacksburg Connection and feeling terribly moved, seeing you meet your father for the first time and see those on screen, those connections between yourself and Dunoon and South Carolina. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about finding the words for this next song, and then sing it to us, because it's so exciting that we've got a song written by Suzanne Bonnar.
I know. Who would have thought? Well, I've also started through lockdown. I've been trying to learn guitar more, probably the past year, but in lockdown, I started to practice more daily. So I've enjoyed, usually melodies and ideas come to me, it's in my head, and that can be really hard to hold and grasp onto. So it's been quite nice to develop another extension of voicing through learning guitar. And it's something I've shied away from for many years, to learn an instrument. I don't know why, but I have. So that's been really quite freeing. And I suppose the inspiration was just thinking about, as a child, the sea, and looking out onto the sea, and that we document history, and that I'm part of a history, that small history of 30 odd years of Dunoon, the Holy Loch, the base, and about friends. When I speak to like your mum and dad and friends who were there and sang and protest for peace, and coming full circle to speak to them now. I was obviously too young then to understand things, and so it's just about my mum and the brave woman that she was. It kind of I try and celebrate elements of a homecoming to Dunoon.
Fantastic. Take it away, Suzanne.
Yay. I sail across the sea by starlight to the shores of the holy love. You take my hand, it's been such a long time. Embrace me with your love, Dunoon. Danune, I hear you calling me all the way from Cherokee County, South Carolina, to the heart of Bonnier Gun. This little piece of history, and so the child was born under the light of the brightest nautical star. Danune, I hear you calling me home to my mother's love, home to my father's dreams, home to love and friends, home to where my grandparents are buried, home to protest songs, to Helen and John, a note for love, home to Jackie and Douglas, they helped me through the tempest of my storm, home to my favorite pirate, he is singing a fond kiss on the Firth of Clyde. Danune, Danune, I hear you calling me. Danune, Danune, I hear you calling me back home.
Wow, that was extraordinary, Suzanne. Really, really loved that. Amazing, amazing, amazing song, wasn't it, Ross?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Great voice.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Very
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah, very, very moving and lovely to have my mum and dad in there. Helen and John, it's so lovely. It's always a bit of a shock to hear yourself mentioned in the song. So it's probably the loveliest thing, actually, to have yourself mentioned in a song, to be named in a song. I don't know, there isn't a word for that, but it's a lovely thing.
Sounding place name, isn't it? It's the Danune. It's got a lovely resonance.
I thought Holy
No,
Loch in Danune. I'm very lucky to have that.
Yeah,
Yeah, as well.
I think the people of Danune will be fair chuffed.
Ah, here's to them.
Yeah, here's to the folk of Danune.
Yes,
People in that wonderful bookshop in Danune.
I know. Yes,
Yeah,
and the pier.
that's right. Here, it's really wonderful to be able to welcome Colin McGuire back, and Colin's going to read to us now. And Colin's a wonderful, outspoken poet who's really dynamic to hear read live. So we're going to hear him read right live in this very moment of ours. You've won various different awards, haven't you, Colin, for your poetry and for your use of poetry in film, which is yet another kind of interesting form. And I love the title of your book. Could you say it for folk? Because I want to hear it in your voice.
Which one?
The enhanced
Full disclosure.
Yeah. Yeah, that has to be one of the best titles, enhanced full disclosure. I just thought it would be good hearing it from you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So and you've also as well. I mean, like Ross and like Suzanne, you have a connection, a more than 10 years connection to the NHS in the sense that you've ran lots of different mindfulness workshops. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit after we hear your poetry. But for now, I'm really looking forward to hearing you read, Colin.
Thank you. I look forward to it. So let's begin. Sit down and shut up. Hold your tongue. Sit at peace. Orientate yourself like a spoon, stirring circles in a coffee cup. Imagine a snail's voyage across the continent of the floor of your living room. Sit down and shut up. Somewhere a leaf trembles on the edge of a runway. Stillness is its own reward. Rare lucidity without appointment. A flightless bee with honey collected. Leave the knocked door. Exhale one deep current. A progress is in silence. This area must be kept clear. Exam quiet, without test. What remains, or what matters, is what remains after every thought and feeling has been extracted from the rush of its making. So yeah, I am studying mindfulness and a mindfulness teacher, and that poem is perhaps maybe the Scottish way to introduce mindfulness. Sit down and shut up. And I often think about the phrases some of my family use, or my gran, that remind me of the Scottish mindfulness ethos of, do you ever sit down, do you ever listen to yourself and hold your tongue and hold your wish? So that sit down and shut up is the Scottish approach, perhaps, the no-nonsense approach to mindfulness. And the next poem I'll read is called A Mindful Moment. And this poem acquaints us or reacquaints us with the present moment. With mindfulness, people talk of present moment awareness. And what is that? And this poem tries to help us come to a sense of what present moment awareness is, the sense of just the real ordinariness of this moment, and how sometimes the ordinariness of life can seem insufficient, but that ultimately that's where we'll come back again and again. So mindful moment. Every day I see, I hear, my heart beats. This moment, my feet on the floor and the blood through my veins, sitting, surrounded by myself. The sound of my pen scratching the page. This moment, what is it? This paying attention, this thought, this moment, this page clear as day. To be aware gently of this now. To welcome myself into this changing now. Each new now, to be here with it as best I can be. My feet, my hands, to see and to hear, to feel, to make contact with people, to listen, to step back and listen again before stepping forward. This moment is a pocket I can settle within. And there is a lot of talk of mindfulness over the last decade or two, or it's quite a long time. It's become more popular, and that's because it does have value. But yet, there's always the lingering shadow aspect of something when it becomes popular, when it becomes well liked or well used. And mindfulness is no stranger to that. I mean, I study mindfulness at uni, and you come across a lot of people advocating for mindfulness, but there's a time to take a step back and some almost criticism of mindfulness, what has become Mick mindfulness, of corporate mindfulness, of business mindfulness, of mindfulness in education, this idea of the utility of mindfulness to achieve results, and this obsession with the present moment. And so this sort of critical thinking came in of, remembering that mindfulness has its limitations, and that sometimes you sit still, but sometimes you want to get up and you want to act, put your will into the world and change things and radically shift perspectives. So this is called I Would Like to Complain, a little corrective to some of mindfulness ideas. I would like to complain. I would like to complain about the fetishizing of the present moment by mindfulness students, as though this present moment were not sand wiped from the cheek, as though meaning could be squeezed out of thin air, as though I could wring the present moment like a wet towel between my hands and release the moisture trapped and say, here, here, this is the element that has been kept hidden, this slipping away, this corroding clock, the strange sheet of time slipped between sleep, as if I could open the present moment like a chest full of gold. And of course, during lockdown, maybe ideal time to meditate, maybe the most difficult time. But this idea of confinement and being trapped or being kept in the same place has often brought with it discussions of loneliness and isolation. And this is a poem I wrote a few years ago, just exploring this idea of intense loneliness or feeling separate from people. And I think that can be felt keenly during lockdown for many. So this is, who is the leading expert on loneliness? Who is the leading expert on loneliness? Being lonely is the same as being punched in the face by a stranger. I get punched in the face almost daily. It's compounding the problem. I go to sleep naked in the fridge freezer and thaw myself out in the shower, which I don't turn on, weeping hot, hysterical, left-wing queer tears. Who is the leading expert on loneliness? I need them to knock on my door to ask me for sugar. And in keeping with this idea of loneliness and separation, we have the poem Passengers, which featured, along with Who's the Leading Expert on Loneliness, in Gutter magazine at issue 20, good Scottish magazine for Scottish and international writing. And in line with separation is this poem Passengers, which just looks at, again, the sense of isolation, but perhaps of hints at masculinity and sensitivities that perhaps are not readily revealed, but the distance between passers-by. So Passengers. I sit in the bus reading. a man comes and sits in front of me, his head at once unnaturally up close, his hair a spider-webbed shock of wispy grey, and in the centre a crop circle of sun-kissed skin. It's as if a bowl has been placed before me, an offering to be appreciated, to consider, to taste. The warm scalp surrounded by a crown of grey, the hairs interlaced like twigs in a nest. How the million entangled strands thread themselves like intricate wires, the hair's strange technology. I want to kiss the bald centre and say, this time will not come again. We should be more comfortable, sharing small compassions between men when the impulse is lit like a call within us. The bus pushes on through Princes Street. The man's head is lit by the evening sun. I watch this strange television for a few seconds more before turning these thoughts over in my head, before turning to look you squarely in the eye. And the final poem for now I'll be reading is, if you like, the accumulation of mindfulness and isolation or separation, sensitivity, difficulties, or perhaps the motivating factors for this poem is Alcoholics Unanimous. So yeah, it's a poem about addiction to alcohol. And I think we can see connections there between mindfulness to help recovery and perhaps even drinking due to feelings of separation or isolation. Not uncommon in Scotland, the UK, the world at large. So this poem is called Alcoholics Unanimous, a place where we're all in agreement. Burst through the door at 6 a.m, leave it wide open for the local wildlife, urinate in the downstairs cupboard, put on your mother's perfume coat and march off to bed muttering that today has been a great success and surely every day is Christmas. Wake up to a urine-soaked mattress and a square sausage on your pillow, a warm buttered roll under your back with a smear of brown sauce across the face, and coffee painted up the wall with the mug hanging on your left foot. A few benevolent beers always turns into too many shots and slammers. The nutty professor turns into Dr. Hyde with a face full of tyranny, the white knight of the far right, gone red behind the eyes, staggering in private storm through the street, bombed, booze-drenched, wallet drowned, shoes soaked, legs sticky with the last of the money, hatless, breast deprived, suckling on the boozy nipple, sucking on the dummy with a smashed clown's fury, bib dribbling, cry for help in a brewery packed with spoiled brats at the mercy of powerful spirits. It's a struggle to close the lid completely, the screw a little off, leaking an oil spill across the floor of the decades. A few glasses of brainwash and a pint of fear, a bottle of red, I'll be fine, a bottle of laughing gas, a bottle of the blood of steaming Christ knows what. But it's fruity, with a hint of dung, the hint of a nail, of a woody crucifixion. vodka tastes of Russian potatoes, and the wine's grief tastes of French vines, the wound of the finest Italian grape. What it means is drank away into the night. Life ages beautifully, sealed in a barrel. He drank the art he couldn't create. And what a sacrifice to wind up shipwrecked at the bottom of a bottle on a matchstick boat, or a wasp trapped inside an upturned pint glass. What a sacrifice to worship holy water at the expense of holy life.
Wow, that was amazing. I really appreciated all the kind of paradoxes that are in your work. That idea that he drank what he couldn't create, the self-destruct button that is in the alcoholic, that button versus the mindfulness, the piece of the appreciating the particular moment. You know, it's like the contradiction with on the one hand the square sausage and the pillow, and on the other hand this beautiful still moment. And I think I get a sense really that you relish those contradictions and paradoxes.
Yeah, Jackie, you're absolutely right. I do love those juxtapositions of the contradictory nature, because the contradictions in my life that reflected in some of the poems, and yeah, always curious to explore them rather than settle with an answer, is to explore the contradictions in being mindful, but then aware, certainly in my past, of more chaotic experiences, and they don't cancel each other out, but they coexist. As you know, being mindful with also still having lots of unusual and crazy experiences that inform things.
Because that last poem, you got a real sense of. I mean, it's funny as well as tragic. That last poem, but this sense of the alcoholic, of that loneliness, but also of the chutzpah and the bravado and the energy and the chaos and the coffee all over the walls and the sobbing and the sense of the heart being worn on the sleeve, everything being out of control, and yet inside that chaos there being something extraordinarily revealing and tender, really.
Yeah, that makes sense to see that. And I think, yeah, with the Alcoholic Unanimous, it is exploring the chaos of what is all too often addiction. You know, the problem with addiction, this dysfunctional, destructive behavior, but it's reflecting on it. You're almost inside it in a way, of the chaos of it, and there's something, the vulnerability of exploring some of the more difficult and compromising material, rather than settling for the easy, I don't know, an easier way of approaching it. You want to inhabit almost the attitude of a dysfunctional addict and show that, rather than present it as a total, if that makes sense, in a reformed way.
Yeah, no, that does, because in a sense, when we write, what we're trying to do is get at some kind of truth, whether it be our truth or somebody else's truth, but we're trying to arrive at some point where we might recognize our truer selves and our creative selves, as well as our destructive selves, and perhaps to see that the destructive self is a creative self, and vice versa, that there isn't one easy way of looking at things, as Ross was mentioning earlier. That you might have a poem about violence that is also a poem about being creative, and that one thing doesn't necessarily easily cancel another out.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just grappling the Alcoholics Unanimous with, all of these conflicting emotions and conflicting experiences, but that actually ultimately there's something to be said for not sacrificing yourself to the rink, but finding a way through it to create your art or to harness that energy in a way that's going to be supportive to your own well-being.
Because there's been so much talk in these particular times that we're living in of how important our own mental health is, and that people have been mentally challenged, all sorts of different people in all sorts of different ways because of the pressure of being locked down, as you mentioned earlier, has brought its own sort of searchlight really into your own home, and into ways of having to deal with things that have been different. Everybody's several layers of skin light, and we're all a bit raw through the experience, but perhaps we've also got to know ourselves better or differently during this period. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a quote, is it Blaise Pascal? He says, the problem with the world is that, this is to paraphrase it incorrectly, but the problem is with the world is that people can't sit alone in a room. So this idea that, you know, we can't sit with ourselves, so lockdown has imposed that on us, and then when we are just surrounded by ourselves, we can really get a lot of difficulties come up, our relationships to ourselves, and that can cause all kinds of instability or reveal certain habitual patterns or negative attitudes. So yeah, I think it's really a destabilizing time for a lot of people. We're trapped in our own houses to some degree, or certainly more so in the previous months, and the sense of confinement and all your routines just upended and defamiliarized with who you are in the world and your place in it. And that can be shocking and destabilizing.
Yeah, it's like a kind of a freight train.
Well, yeah,
Freight train.
yeah, it's just smashed through our daily life.
Just smashed through our lives and takes us in this kind of real roller coaster journey, back to our past and back into our present moment. It's like isolation or enforced isolation makes people go through memories at speed, really, and then bring themselves back, I suppose, to a moment where you might be, or you might want to be, try to be mindful. But this is a good moment to bring back Suzanne Bonnar into our Zoom room, because Suzanne's going to sing for us Freight Train, which seems to me just about the most appropriate song that you could possibly sing at this moment. Suzanne, why did you pick it?
Well, a mutual friend, Douglas Gordon, fantastic artist and gorgeous, gorgeous human being. He sent me some work of Elizabeth Cotton, and I'd completely forgotten all about her. And it was a song he used to sing to his son, James Gray, Sugaree. But when I was listening to the songs, I fell in love with Freight Train. So I thought, this just feels right for this week and the NHS, and also to kind of bring in the heritage of Carolina. So I've been to Dunoon and then to Elizabeth Cotton was from North Carolina. My family were from South, but she also worked with the Seegers, and it was the Seeger family who helped introduce and bring our albums and kind of, I suppose, document some of the work. It's so important, and reminds me of when I went to America and many of my grand's friends, and in the small town that my freight train, and it just seems so big and, you know, overwhelming, and you hear that sound going through the town and the heat of the midday. So I thought, yes, Freight Train. So here I go.
Great, thank you, Suzanne.
Freight train, carry me home. Freight train, carry me home. Please don't tell them what route I'm on, so they won't know where I'm going. Whee! When I'm dead and in my grave, no more good times here I crave. Place the stone at my head and my feet, and tell them I've gone to sleep. When I die, Lord, bury me deep, way down on Old Chestnut Street, so I can hear old number 9 rolling by as she comes along. When I die, Lord, bury me deep, way down on old Chestnut Street, so I can hear her rolling by as she comes along. Well, freight train, run so fast. Freight train, run so fast. Please don't tell what train I'm on. They won't know what route I'm going. Oh, please don't tell what route I'm on. They won't know what train I'm going. Woo!
Great.
Oh, brilliant.
How did you like that, guys?
Aye, excellent.
Yeah, really good and interesting. Elizabeth Cotton, fast. Look,
She's incredible. You've got to watch some of her. There's footage on YouTube, and just her face is oh gosh, it's just incredible. And her playing, some of it vocally, she's quite fragile because she's older, but it reminds me of there's a timbre in the voice, and you know, it was Miss Suzanne, don't wait, you know, that kind of, she's got that real authenticness in the voice. It's just incredible when you hear. So allowing for all of that, it's very real and truthful. She's gorgeous.
And you mentioned the Seeger family. So
Yes.
I can perhaps let one cat out of the bag, and that Peggy Seeger is going to be one of the Makars coming up quite soon, and it would just be so fantastic to have her on Makar to Makar. It's been really fantastic having everybody here tonight for this really special Makar to Makar. It's made us think about health in all of the different ways, about our mental health, our physical health, our health when we're isolated, and our health when we're connected, and how important it is really to have a sense of community spirit, a sense of being with other people, a sense of being united or unanimous or connected. And that one of the things that's been difficult about this particular time is that people have lost some of the connections that they so cherish in their lives. And we've been thinking about that, and about new connections, new life coming into our world in the form of the likes of Rosie with her rosy cheeks. We're going to finish the program for tonight with each of our Makars of the week reading one last poem. And Ross, you're going to begin with Echo.
Okay, this is it's another wee poem from Letters to Rosie. Echo. The voices of ducks, doggies and birdies echoed in the caves of our mouths. Ack, ack, oof, oof, weet, weet. In underpass, I let your name rise deep from my chest, so you could hear it bounce back at us, as moments like this will come back when we are far from here, and your hand no longer needs my hand. That's it. It's a wee one.
Lovely. Lovely. You can see that being a father, becoming a father, has been such an important life experience for you, and perhaps changed your sense completely of who you are in the world.
Aye, I think that's probably true for every parent, I would imagine. But yeah, aye, it's definitely. And I'll probably write a lot more light-hearted and hopefully not too sentimental poems than I would otherwise be doing, but it's all good stuff, and she's great fun to have around.
Great.
I hope you're certainly hearing her actually, because she's kind of running around downstairs.
It would be absolutely fine if we did, because it'd be fine, because that's one of the things about being in the Zoom room. We just, you know,
she might make a cameo any minute and crash the camera.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. We welcome kids onto Makar to Makar too. If a wee child ran right onto the middle of the screen, it'd be fantastic for everybody. We'd be all delighted to see her. And Colin,
the bus. But singing,
Yeah, and Colin, you're going to finish your reading with a really intriguingly titled Fascist Guide to Salad.
Yes. Shall we finish with a salad, a light salad? So yeah, Fascist Guide to Salad. Let's begin. Let's get started. Fascist Guide to Salad. We exclude peppers of all colours on racial grounds. No red onions, Bolshevik tearjerkers, every last one. No sweet corn caught in the teeth like prisoners of war on barbed wire. We exclude all potatoes, inferior forms of base origin, though they weather all winter. In their pallid form, they are sluggish, lumpen, proletarian. No environmentally green lettuce like sheets of bland paper in the mouth. No French dressing drooling in all its effeminacy. No drizzle of olive oil from Italian peasant fields. No free-range eggs. Only the finest yolk from the purest born eagle. No Greek affectation, fetid cheese. No Caesar salad stabbed in the back with his own cutlery. No mezzi platter selections sneaking through the plate's border. Do you hear them sing? Do you hear the people sing? The tomatoes will prevail. The tomatoes will prevail. No, the tomatoes bleed like liberals all the same. Blood dripping from their tongues. This salad will be the finest, made only to be acknowledged, prized only for its privilege, a museum exhibit around which people gawp. Behold the cold white porcelain bowl, empty and gleaming.
That's mental, isn't it, Suzanne?
I've got a salad waiting
You won't be able to look at salad in quite the same way ever again. Well, I promised you earlier that I would read the last part of this long poem about illness, and so this is where it hurts, and I've got to issue a strong language warning again for the end of it. You can't say I haven't tried everything: hypnotherapy, acupuncture, homeopathy, reflexology, my tarot's read, my chart done. See that? Astrology, psychoanalytical psychotherapy, Alexander's technique, moved my three-piece suite, rubbed seaweed on my feet, something meant to unblock my energy, synergy, brown rice and bananas for breakfast, dinner, tea, Nat Muir, wasn't that my remedy? The sea in me, my homeopathic personality. I hoard painful memories, I nurse grievances, I don't forgive, I take offence easily. Don't say I haven't tried to be well. I've tried, I've smiled. But what's a smile but an attempt to hide the tears? Many's the time I've gone out unwell, near collapsing, a burning pain straight down the middle of the throat, dead centre, like somebody's lit a line of gunpowder, the sick headache tightening the screws, zigzags, the mood swings, my sinuses scream, I look like a hag, there's not a pain I haven't had. I could paint the pains on a big white sheet, the weary wabbit world of the worried unwell. It's not just me, I'm not the only one. Were we always this ill? Was I? When we die, is the sensation heavy, light? I'll die a weighty, hefty, heaving death. Other people might take flight like graceful swallows, but I'll be a huge pig squealing, a fucking great buffalo roaring. What a big bitter pill to swallow. Will it be red? Will it be yellow? After all I've been through, a great thumping death, a fucking great fucking big death. So that's it. Illnesses through the years. and we were talking about creating different voices, the voices of alcoholics, the voices of illness, the voices of boxers, all of the different voices that people, our lives and our imaginations in various different ways. And one of the impetuses, I guess, behind this program, Makar to Makar, is to give you in your living room a wee insight into our living rooms and into our minds. So it's been I don't know what on earth that long poem says about illness and about my mind, but it was great fun to write, and it was great fun to try and explore all of the different ways in which we've been ill and all of the different approaches that we've had to illness over time, over a long period of time. So it's been a huge pleasure having Ross Wilson here on Makar to Makar, having Colin McGuire here on Makar to Makar, and having Suzanne Bonnar back on Makar to Makar. Just before we go, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your favourite bookshop, Ross.
I think my favourite is probably the Waterstones in Glasgow, Sucky Hall Street. I went there when I was I don't know if it was 18 or 19 when it opened. Somebody tipped me off, so I got the bus to Glasgow for Fife, where I was living at the time. 2 buses actually. And Unky and Banks opened it, and to this day I meet friends in the cafe and stuff there. So, and seeing my book on the shelf was quite a big moment. Finally, after about 20 years of trying. So yeah, I like it there.
Fantastic. And what about you, Colin?
Well, the bookshop I visit the most is, well, it was Lighthouse Books in Edinburgh, or God, I've almost forgotten. Is it Type Wrongers in Leith, at the top of Leith Walk? They're 2 really great bookshops, and I'd welcome you to go there.
Fantastic. Well, every week on the programme we recommend a favourite independent bookshop, and every week on the programme we announce who the next Makars are going to be. And so I wonder if each of you would like to say the name. Next week we're really lucky, really blessed, because we're going to have 3 young Makars on Makar to Makar. Can you tell us their names?
Oh, Raymond Antrobus.
Yeah, and the brilliant Jay Bernard, they'll be on.
And Ella Duffy. Yay!
Fantastic. So we have wonderful Raymond Androbus, Jay Bernard, and Ella Duffy on next week's Makar to Makar. Well, this programme is made possible by the help and the support and the funding of the National Theatre of Scotland, who are hosting this programme online, by Edinburgh International Book Festival, by the School of Arts and Media at the University of Salford, and by Home Manchester. Thank you all very much for funding us and for making this possible. And thank you at home for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.